What's going on, boys? It is Clements back on the mic, back with another banger of a video, and today I'm doing something quite unusual to what I'm used to doing on the channel. Today I'm going to be providing you guys with the top 10 meta loadouts in Warzone right now as of the new Season 5 update. There's been a lot of weapon buffs and nerfs, so I thought I'd cover this on the channel. Hopefully, if you guys enjoy this sort of stuff and find this kind of video helpful, then I'll definitely look into doing more like this. So let me know by clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel if you are new. It goes a long way and it's always appreciated. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump straight into the meat and potatoes. So the first loadout is a tempered loadout for like emergencies, or when I buy a second loaded to then get my tempered class after getting my overkill class, you know what I'm trying to say. Or some people run ghost instead of tempered, but I've always liked tempered more. So as the primary weapon, we're going to be using the Nikita assault rifle, an absolute monster at close and mid-range engagements. It kicks like a horse sometimes due to its insane fire rate. With the right attachments, we can most certainly do something about that. So we're going to be running the MX silencer, the longest barrel, which is the Empress 613mm barrel, for the most recoil control, the most damage range, and the most bullet velocity possible. For the underbarrel, we're going to be using the hand stock for added recoil control, and also as a juicy bonus, we get sprint to fire speed as well. And then we're going to be running the 3 to 6 scope. This scope is pretty standard on all Vanguard weapons. It's got the least visual recoil. For the stock, we'll be using the ZAC MS for aiming stability and horizontal recoil control. We're also going to be using the Perfectionist perk for added recoil control. Fully loaded for max starting ammo. You'll notice that a lot of these attachments are focused more on recoil control, and that's because this gun does have quite a bit of recoil. So with this class, we're trying to change it into an absolute laser beam. I'm going to be running the hatched grip. We're going to be using the standard 50 round magazine just for the added ammo capacity. And then for the ammunition type, I did actually make a mistake with this. I realised that I was running hollow point when in fact we're supposed to be running lengthened for the most bullet velocity possible with no cons whatsoever. So that's the Nikita, and then as the secondary, running the Sykov pistol. An extremely underused weapon in my opinion, a perfect secondary substitute when it's needed, like when you're fresh from the gulag late game for example. So we're going to be running the monolithic suppressor, we're going to be running the 140mm automatic barrel. That's the key to this weapon. Without that barrel, it's going to be pretty useless, and it's just going to be a semi-auto pistol. We're going to be using the tac laser and the 80 round drum. That's also another compulsory attachment. Without the 80 round drum, it's going to be pretty much useless. You're going to run out of ammo really quick. And for the rear grip, we're running the VLK Priz Rack. So that's the first loadout out the way. So moving on now, for the primary weapon in this loadout, we're going to be using the MP40. Now this gun has been hit with a few nerfs as of recently, but it's still a very viable SMG to use. It's got one of the fastest time to kills around and has a pretty low recoil with the right build. So for the muzzle, we're going to be running the recoil booster for that added fire rate, very important on this weapon. Fire rate isn't the best. We're going to be using the 317mm barrel for the most control and accuracy. A lot of people like to run the short barrel, but for me, I prefer to engage in both close and mid-range engagements with the MP40. I think it's a pretty accurate weapon given that you're running the longest barrel. So for me, it's always the 317mm barrel. For the underbarrel, we're going to be running the Mark 6 skeletal, just for the added mobility primarily. You get added ADS speed and also movement speed, which is always nice to have on an SMG. For the magazine, we're running the 40 round magazine for bullet velocity and range, bullet penetration and added damage as well. We're going to be running the hollow point as the ammunition type for extra limb damage, which is very important. It does affect your damage range, but on an SMG it's not too much to worry about, especially when you're running the longest barrel. If you're running the short barrel, then the magazine type might be different. For the rear grip, we're running the tape grip just for all that added mobility. Again, look at all that you get, all those pros with absolutely zero cons. It's a must-have. For the perk, we're running the nerves of steel for accuracy and recoil control whilst injured. And then moving on to perk 2, we're running quick for added sprint speed. Once again, we need all the mobility we can get on an SMG. For the stock, we're running the folding stock, which is kind of like the no stock. You can use the remove stock if you want, but I just prefer the folding just because it gives you more mobility and less cons. And then for the optic, it's kind of preference. I'm using an alternate iron sight, but I know a lot of people like to use the slate reflector. It's complete preference on the optic. So that's the MP40 build, and then we're going to be pairing that with the XM4. Definitely one of the most easy and consistent ARs to use in Warzone right now. It's definitely a fan favourite. I know a lot of people stand by this weapon, and rightly so. So for the muzzle, we're going to be using the agency suppressor for added sound suppression, vertical recoil control, bullet velocity and effective damage range, which is always nice, allowing us to engage at further distances. And then for the barrel, we're using the 13.5 inch task force barrel for bullet velocity, horizontal and vertical recoil control, and even more effective damage range, which is fantastic on an assault rifle. For the underbarrel, we're going to be using the field agent grip for the horizontal and vertical recoil control, trying to convert the XM4 into an absolute laser beam as much as we possibly can. Moving on to the magazine, we're going to be using the standard 60 round magazine. There's no reason really to be using the 60 round fast mag. It's not really worth the ADS penalty, so I always stick with a 60 round magazine, or you could use the 45 round speed mag if you really want to, but I like the extra 15 bullets. Ammo capacity is always key. And then for the optic, I like to run the Axial Arms 3x optic. I think I'm saying that right, just because it's a 3x optic. It's much like the VLK for modern warfare weapons. So yeah, that's the XM4. Moving on to the third loadout of today's video, we have the Mark 05. A very reliable and competitive SMG to be using in all scenarios in game. I believe it got nerfed with the Season 5 update, but it's still a top tier SMG to use. So for the muzzle, we're going to be running the recoil booster once again for that added fire rate. Does knock off your accuracy, but it's not anything to really worry or concern yourself about. For the barrel, we're going to be using the 342mm M13. It's the most accurate barrel on there, and it also gives you some flinch resistance, which is fantastic. For the underbarrel, we're running the Mark 6 skeletal once again, just for the added mobility, the ADS speed and the movement speed, which is always nice. Does knock off your hip fire accuracy, but we aren't really going to be hip firing with this weapon, so that's absolutely fine. For the magazine, we're using the standard 48 round drum just for the ammo capacity. Once again, ammo capacity is everything in Warzone. We're going to be using hollow point as the ammunition type for the added limb damage. And then moving on to the rear grip, we're going to be using the tape grip, just because once again this is a mobility beast. Aiming stability, movement speed, weapon swap quickness and sprint to fire speed, all that for absolutely nothing. No cons whatsoever with that attachment. It's fantastic, it's definitely key. We're going to be using the momentum as perk 1 for sprint speed after kills, and then quick as perk 2 for added sprint speed even more. We're going to be using the Imerito FR stock, which is basically kind of the closest thing we're going to get to no stock. Gives us some added mobility. And then for the optic, again, it's preference. I've got the slate reflector on the Marco just because the iron sight isn't quite my cup of tea. And we're going to be pairing this with the Cooper Carbine. A very easy to control assault rifle. I admit, not the sharpest tool in the shed, definitely not the best assault rifle to be using at long ranges, but mid-range engagements this gun definitely shines very bright, more than any other, especially due to its low recoil. So we're going to be running the MX silencer once again for sound suppression, horizontal and vertical recoil control and added damage range. We're going to be using the most highly accurate barrel on here, which is the 22 inch Cooper Custom. This barrel also gives us some added fire rate, which is great. For the underbarrel, we're going to be using the hand stock for the added recoil control. Once again, very, very important on an assault rifle. Trying to remain as accurate as possible. For the magazine, we're going to be using the 60 round drum for recoil control and accuracy, even more fire rate, some added ADS, and of course we obviously get the added ammo capacity with it being a 60 round drum magazine. And then again, we get some added fire rate with the compressed rounds. The fire rate on this thing is insane, and it's an absolute laser beam. It's really easy to use. For the rear grip, we're going to be running the Palmer grip for added flinch resistance, accuracy and recoil during sustained fire as well, which is great. We want to continue hitting our shots even when we're under fire. For the perk, we're going to be using Vital for increased torso damage. I always run this on all my assault rifles. And then for perk 2, once again we're running fully loaded just for the maximum starting ammo. For the stock, we're running the Cooper Custom Padded for again accuracy and recoil control whilst under sustained fire, and we're also running the 3 to 6 scope once again for the least visual recoil. And of course you get the 3 and 6 times zoom, which is always nice to fluctuate between whenever it's needed. So next we've got the Owen Gun. This was once upon a time the king of SMGs when Vanguard was first integrated into Warzone, and since then it's been nerfed a few times, but trust me when I say this gun still melts. It's very, very powerful. So again, you guessed it, we're going to be running the recoil booster for that added fire rate. We're going to be using the 188mm shrouded barrel for the least damage fall off, added bullet velocity and added limb damage, which is what makes this gun melt so much. I'm going to be using the skeletal underbarrel again for the added mobility, movement speed and ADS speed. We're using the 7.62 Gorenko 72 round drum magazine for the added recoil control and accuracy, which is nice, and some juicy added fire rate as well, which is awesome. For the ammunition type, we're running hollow point again for the added limb damage. You'll notice that this gun has a lot of limb damage, and we're also improving the fire rate on it as well, which makes this gun so powerful. For the rear grip, we're using the tape grip again for the added mobility. We're using acrobatic as perk 1 for movement speed and sprinting movement speed. With this perk, this gun is an absolute mobility monster, and we're also going to add quick as the perk 2 as well. And on top of that, we're going to even put the remove stock on there, so we've got even more movement speed. Honestly, it's a mobility monster, this gun. And then as the optic, we have the slate reflector, but you guys can kind of use whatever you want. So yeah, that's the Owen Gun. And then coming up next, we have the Kilo, an all-time favourite assault rifle of mine, an excellent choice for new players to Warzone, and that's why I chose to include it in today's video. It's not at the top of the pile when it comes to long range ARs, but it's far from the bottom, so it's worth using definitely still in Vanguard Season 5. So for the muzzle running the monolithic suppressor for the obvious sound suppression and added damage range, which, as I've mentioned many times in the video already, is very important on an assault rifle. We're going to be using the longest barrel here for the most damage range, bullet velocity and added recoil control. We're going to be running the Commando foregrip for added recoil stabilization and some aiming stability as well. Going to be using the 60 round magazine just for the ammo capacity, of course. We definitely don't want to be running out of ammo. And then for the optic, we're running the VLK 3x optic. So yeah, that's the Kilo 141, an OG assault rifle in Warzone that is still worth using today in my opinion. So next up, we have the Cold War MP5, one of the fastest killing SMGs in the game. This gun destroys at close range. Anything past close range though, this gun definitely struggles, but if you're toe to toe with an enemy around 5 or 6 meters, this gun will likely outgun your opponent. So we're running the agency suppressor for the obvious sound suppression. Also gives us recoil control and bullet velocity, which is very important. You know, we want our bullets to fly through the air as fast as possible. We also run the task force barrel. A lot of people don't run a barrel on the MP5, but in my opinion, I always prefer to run the task force. I like the stray speed on this weapon. I like to feel as mobile as possible. For the laser, we're running the Tiger Team Spotlight for the added movement speed and aim walking movement speed. Then we're running the 50 round drum magazine for added ammo capacity and the Raider stock for the ADS and aim walking movement speed and the sprint to fire time as well, which is always nice. So that's the Cold War MP5. Next up, we have the STG, a very highly controllable AR with pretty good mobility. Can't go wrong with the STG. With the correct loadout, this thing still lasers people from incredible distances, no matter how many times I've nerfed this thing. So we're running the MX silencer for the sound suppression, horizontal and vertical recoil control, and added damage range. We're going to be using the most accurate longest barrel on here for the most accuracy and control, and added damage range and added bullet velocity as well. Notice that a lot of these barrels on the Vanguard guns say reduce scope, sway and gun bob, but I'm pretty sure gun bob got removed from Warzone, even though I'm pretty sure it does exist in Vanguard. We're going to be using the hand stop for the recoil control. We're going to be using the Russian short 45 round mag for bullet velocity and range, bullet penetration and damage as well. You could use the Gorenko 50 round mags if you want, it's complete preference. I always go for the 45 rounds there. We're going to be using the lengthened as the ammunition type. For the added bullet velocity, we're going to be using the Palmer grip for the flinch resistance. We're going to be using focus as the perk for even more flinch resistance. Once again, perk 2 fully loaded. And then for the stock, we're going to be using the VDD 34S weighted for the most accuracy, the most flinch resistance, recoil control and aiming stability possible. And for the optic, I'm using the 2.5 times, mainly because it suits this blueprint though. Usually I will go for the 3 to 6 times, and I do recommend doing that just because, again, that scope does actually give you the least visual recoil possible. So yeah, but it's complete preference. You could use the 2.5 times like me. Next up, we have the C58 from Cold War. A massively slept on powerhouse in my opinion. I barely see anyone using this, and I'm not sure why. This gun is an absolute powerhouse. It's a sledgehammer. It knocks people down. Its only downfall is its slow fire rate. If you hit your shots consistently, you're going to tear through enemies. So for the muzzle running the agency suppressor, for the obvious sound suppression, bullet velocity and recoil control, we're using the task force barrel for even more bullet velocity, horizontal and vertical recoil control, and even more damage range. So we're getting the furthest damage range possible, so we can engage in further and further away gunfights. We're using the field agent grip as the underbarrel for the recoil control. The standard 45 round drum magazine is what I usually use, but you could use a 55 round drum. I just don't like the ADS penalty because I'll admit the C50 ADS is pretty slow, and again we are using the Axial arms 3x optic, and I like to pair this up with the Mac 10. Once, if anything, a very overused SMG, definitely a most popular back in the day when it was born. Now it's not something you see used all too often, however I still think it's a beast with reasonable recoil and such a fast fire rate. So once again, we're using the agency suppressor for the sound suppression, vertical recoil control, bullet velocity and effective damage range. We're going to be using the task force barrel for the added strafe speed and the bullet velocity and even more damage range. For the laser, we're going to be using the Tiger Team Spotlight for the aim, walking movement speed, and just generic movement speed as well. Trying to get the most mobility out of this thing because on an SMG, mobility is everything. So if you can increase the mobility, definitely do so, just like we're doing with the Bruiser grip as well. The movement speed there again, and we also get a juicy bonus of hip fire accuracy, which is always nice. No cons whatsoever with the Bruiser grip, so it's kind of a 2-for-1 there. And then for the magazine, we're using the standard 53 round drum. Now next is a very honourable mention, the FFAR from Cold War. Another favourite of mine back when this thing was OP meta is when I loved Warzone the most. It was so fun to use, and really it still is. It's a phenomenal choice for sniper support as a sort of SMG build like the one I will be giving you guys today. So yeah, bear in mind this is an SMG build. Whilst it is an assault rifle, it's not that great of an assault rifle, but as an SMG up close it's great. So we're using the actual regular suppressor this time for sound suppression, ADS, bullet velocity and sprint to fire speed. Again with this build it's SMG, so we're trying to get the most mobility possible. We're using the field agent grip, which is very much needed. It's key on the FFAR because it does have a lot of recoil, so without the field agent grip you're going to really struggle to win mid-range engagements if your gun is shooting up and it starts shooting at the NASA space station in the sky. Okay, you're not going to win those fights, so field agent grip is a must. Using the standard 50 round magazine, that is also a must because the fire rate on this thing is insane. We're using the Serpent wrap just for the added ADS because the ADS time on the FFAR is pretty slow, especially with the 50 round magazine. They nerfed this gun a long time ago by increasing the ADS penalties on attachments. We're using the Raider stock for the ADS movement speed, aim walking movement speed and the sprint to fire time, and we're pairing this, like I said, I like to use the FFAR as sniper support, so I'm using the Kar 98K from Modern Warfare. Like all Modern Warfare snipers and marksman rifles have kind of been made purposely obsolete, which is unfortunate, but I still think the Kar has a place in Warzone, and so I still recommend running the OG build in your class. A lot of you guys will probably be familiar with this. We're using the monolithic suppressor, the longest barrel possible for the most damage range possible and the most bullet velocity, and we also get some recoil control on there, but recoil control doesn't really matter too much on the Kar. We're using the TAC laser most importantly for the ADS, but we also get some aiming stability and aim walking movement speed as well. Aim walking steadiness, sorry. We're using the sniper scope just because it's a 4x optic, very important, and I like to use a sleight of hand for the reload quickness. Some people like to use stipple grip tape, or they'd like to run a stock on there. It's completely up to you what you do with the 5th attachment. So moving on to the next class, starting off with the Fennec. A lot of people call this gun hit scan, which I find really funny because I don't think it's quite that overpowered, but it is still such a powerful and really undervalued meta weapon. I'd personally even go as far as to say this gun is meta and just a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people sleep on this gun. But yeah, it really is fantastic, and it's great that they're buffing a lot of Modern Warfare guns as well. So for the barrel, we're using the ZLR Dreadfall, which gives us damage range, recoil control, sound suppression, which is very important, and bullet velocity. With the added sound suppression on the barrel, we are saving an attachment slot, so that is great. We're using the 40 round drum, we're using the stipple grip tape for the added ADS and sprint to fire speed. We're running the sleight of hand, which is very important on this gun because the fire rate is insane, so you're going to go through bullets really quickly, and the reload animation is extremely slow, so sleight of hand is a must have, and then the no stock we need as well for added movement speed and added ADS. Whilst this gun is really good, it is one of the least mobile SMGs, at least from Modern Warfare. It's extremely sluggish, it's not got the best movement speed, and the ADS is pretty slow. But we're going to pair this up with the M13 from Modern Warfare as well. Another really easy to learn assault rifle here, a sheer laser beam when built correctly. So we're going to be using the monolithic suppressor for sound suppression and damage range. We're going to be using the Tempest Marksman barrel, which is the longest barrel on here, added damage range, added bullet velocity, and even more recoil control, making this gun the laser that we want it to be. And then moving down to the underbarrel, using the Commando foregrip for the recoil stabilization and aiming stability, using the 60 round magazine. I almost said 50 there. Sometimes I run the 50, sometimes I run the 60. It doesn't really matter too much. It's complete preference there. And once again, the VLK 3x optic, just so we're getting a 3x zoom there, and it's a really clean scope as well. Definitely a must-have on Modern Warfare assault rifles. Now, an old but gold, no pun intended there, weapon right here, the MP5, another OG gun from way back in the day, not appreciated enough by people. Whilst it got hit with a few nerfs about a year ago, it's still a perfectly underrated capable SMG, an absolute joy to use. So we're going to be running the monolithic integral suppressor. This barrel, just like the Fennec class that I just gave you guys, has an integrated suppressor, which is great, and it also adds bullet velocity. We're using the Merc foregrip for recoil control and hip fire accuracy, which is always nice to have on an SMG. A lot of people like to use the 5mm laser with the Merc foregrip just to increase that hip fire accuracy even more, but for the magazine I'm going to be using the standard 45 round magazine. Definitely never recommend the 30 round. It got nerfed a long time ago. Sleight of hand, because like the Fennec, the reload animation on the MP5 from Modern Warfare is pretty slow, and we're using the collapsible stock, which is basically no stock, for added movement speed and ADS. Now, a lot of people are going to call me a madman on this one for including this in today's video, but lads, I stand and swear by this thing. If you can learn the AMAX's recoil pattern like I have, you can still beam people with the AMAX. People say it got nerfed to the ground, and I thought so too, but whoever said that, I need a serious word, because this gun is still good. So we're using a monolithic suppressor, we're using the XRK Zodiac barrel for the most damage range possible, the most bullet velocity possible, and added recoil control. We're using the Commando foregrip for recoil stabilization and aiming stability as well. You could use the Ranger foregrip, and a lot of people like to use the Ranger just because of that recoil and how strong it is and how this gun does kick in the air. But for me, I like the Commando. I've learnt the recoil pattern, I can deal with it, and I don't like the added ADS penalty as well that you get with the Ranger. We're using the 45 round magazine, getting the most bullets into this weapon as possible, and then we're using the VLK 3x optic again. So yeah, honestly guys, give the AMAX a try. It's really not as bad as people make it out to be. It is still a really viable weapon to use in Warzone, and it's a lot of fun. Now, moving on to the last loadout of today's video, we have the Vargo, a very well balanced assault rifle with a very good fire rate whilst highly effective at range. Definitely a top tier weapon to be using right now in Warzone. So for the muzzle, we're in the groove suppressor for sound suppression, vertical recoil control, bullet velocity, and effective damage range, using the task force barrel for even more bullet velocity, vertical and horizontal recoil control, and even more damage range as well, using the Spetsnaz grip for recoil control on both horizontal and vertical. Moving on to the magazine, we're using the 45 rounds. Some people might want to use the 60 rounds, but for me personally, I like the 45. I think it's enough, and I don't like the ADS penalty you get on the Vargo. And we're going to be using the Axile Arms 3x optic as well. Also, not to get this confused with the Vargo from Vanguard, this is the Vargo 52 from Cold War. And now we have the OTS for the final weapon. A beautiful legendary weapon in my books, and I'm sure in a lot of other people's books as well. I love this SMG. It's one of the most mobile SMGs in the game, and it's not even a Vanguard weapon. With this build, you are going to be flying through the map. It's extremely reliable and extremely consistent. We're running the groove suppressor for the sound suppression, recoil control, bullet velocity, and effective damage range. For the barrel, we're using the task force barrel for the strafe speed, bullet velocity, and effective damage range. We're using the Tiger Team Spotlight again to add to that mobility. Now this is a key attachment. This is what's going to make you fly through the map, and mix the Tiger Team Spotlight with the Cruiser grip on this gun, and you are going to be flying like Superman on half a gram of cocaine, and I'm not even joking. And for the magazine, we're using the 40 round fast mag. The fast mag is essential on the OTS because the reload speed is quite tragic. That's all I've got for you guys today. If you did enjoy this video, let me know by smashing a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I'll definitely be looking into doing more videos just like this one if you guys enjoy it and find this sort of stuff useful. So yeah, I've been Clements, you've been absolutely amazing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out and take care.